sure that we're not putting a tier one at risk.
Sure, sure.
So for us, this year we're doing a pilot, so my social compliance officer, let's call her my social compliance officer. She's a contractor, and I only have her 15 hours a week.
Okay.
So, other than that, I'm your social compliance officer. It's not great.
Okay.
Yeah, so, there's only the two of us that work on all the social compliance. She, was originally from FLA, so she worked at FLA for a long time. She actually onboarded for her when they were applying. And she's younger,
Okay.
so she's, been with FLA, she does a lot of advocacy, she's amazing.
Okay.
But since I only get her for 15 hours a week, obviously I use her to comb through all of the caps and things like that, because I'm an executor, I'm not an expert. So on certain things, I'll be like, oh, this looks fine, and she's like, oh, no. I'm like, what, they punched it early, what's the big deal? Shows initiative. You're like, no, you cannot punch it early, that means they're getting overtime, So a lot of those things, that's where I focus her on. So knowing that we have this mill issue, potential mill issue, we've kind of said, what do we need to do? And with the amount of mills we have, to audit would be atrocious amount of money, because auditing is
time.
very expensive. We don't have the time,
Yeah.
and I would have to have somebody else be able to sit here and look at the caps,
Yeah.
because we barely get through the 24 vendors that we have.
Mhm.
So we've been trying to use the audits that we have from the FSLN. So from there, using those audits seems to be the best way to look at mills. Like I said, there's no industry standard, no one will ever answer you what's the best way to do mill things. There's a couple companies out there, Verite, I think is what we used. There was a group of us,
Okay.
many brands that got together and had done some auditing. We used Veritas across the board.
Okay.
And then,
The Bureau Veritas.
yes,
BV,
correct,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then some of the outdoor brands have used Diversity or something, something I'd never heard of, for audits. And then, as you know, some brands just have their own social people do the audits themselves, which it's not third party, so I'm not sure how that works. So that's kind of the route we've been going. We also opened up our tier one this year to the SLCP. So that's new for us, being able to use it. We've done a lot of comparisons because we spend a ton of money on our audits. We also are in better work. So we rack up a lot of invoicing with audits. So with SLCP, that's over the years become a little bit more industry used.
Okay.
And there's an easier way to do caps with that
Right.
we've kind of discovered. So we're gonna test that out a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, let me look into this a little bit more too, because I think for all listed companies globally, and this was definitely in Taiwan, I think obviously you're talking about, environmental and social compliance and all these other ones too. And of course that's just starting now, right? So we are going through the steps for that. So I think that's why I mentioned probably harmonizing too. And obviously the factory that we use, obviously we don't have anything extreme, obviously. But nowadays it's not really so much. In Vietnam, as far as I can see, for example, that's where most of the production is nowadays for Thomas companies. It's not so much of a problem. Longer shifts is probably the worst.
Yeah, I've seen this year
Yeah.
has been excessive overtime.
Okay.
Excessive overtime has come up
Okay.
in almost every audit.
Yeah.
And used to never see excessive overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had excessive overtime and excessive heat.
Okay.
Those have been the two hot topics across audits for us. And it's
Okay.
been, like AAFA's done some advocacy for excessive heat, and it was very contentious. It was very interesting. You would think, okay, make sure they have water bottles, make sure they're having the breaks, make sure it's ventilated.
Yeah.
And then there was some pushback too, like, well, what about like people that work in industry bakeries and
Or a dye mill.
and it's and having chairs that have things, and what if you're in the construction industry and you're getting paid a bonus if you
Yeah.
get done earlier, et cetera. So
Yeah.
it brought up a lot of other things where it's like, it's not a one size fits all, and obviously excessive heat wasn't just in the apparel industry that
Right.
we're kind of bouncing ideas off of, but
Yeah.
that's been something that's come up a lot more, and in Vietnam and Cambodia.
Right, right. I mean, and you know, like with the tier ones that we work with, like they're our customers, right? We've been to their factory. Usually, you know, they can keep that cooler. They have, you know, some like water mist and some other ways to keep the area cool, higher ceilings, that kind of stuff. And that's possible. But I think for a spinning mill or a dyeing mill, it's not realistic. Yeah. But of course, you know, obviously, you know, we need to protect our workers, and we're doing that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, we want them to be productive, not dying of heat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it depends too, different countries and levels of humidity, and that plays into it a lot.
Yeah, they're you know, people are wearing hoodies, you know, really heavy hoodies in 30°C weather.
I mean,
Right.
how many times when I would go to India,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, why does everyone have a cold? And they're like, it's 105 degrees, it's freezing.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, everyone has a cold, every single person here has a cold.
Yeah.
And the same thing like Thailand, where you've got that intense humidity where it's
Yeah.
like, you were like, I'm going to pass out.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah. Like back when I was in Taiwan, I can only run races in 15°C or lower because it's, you know, running like a marathon. And in Vietnam, now I'm used to it, and I'm running, you know, in the heat, and it's okay. And actually, if I go back to Europe or go back to the States, it's too cold for me.
Yeah, exactly. When we lived in California, I'd be like, oh, my blood is thinned, you know?
Yeah.
But like even in Atlanta,
Yeah.
like the humidity in the
Oh,
summer.
it's high, yeah. Yeah, I have family in Atlanta, and
I'm like, I can't go out until after 4 p.m.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
yeah.
That's true. Or Dubai, same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where you get that
Yeah.
intensity.
But overtime part, that's interesting too.
Overtime, it's excessive
What is
overtime.
excessive overtime now? I haven't really had a chance to go through the.
So it's still, you're still working Saturdays, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just excessive among the way that they map out how many hours they can be
Okay.
working.
Oh, I see.
And then the counter argument too is sometimes on the excessive overtime, it's like, well, some of the workers want to be working the overtime, and it's like, okay, but then how do you come up with what's fair pay for overtime?
Yeah.
And then it plays into a lot with the living wage, because then we also do living wage across
Yeah,
all of our
yeah.
vendors.
That's true, because a lot of workers petition, and then we, you know, actually the unions are pretty strong in Vietnam. So they petition, they want 2 shifts versus 3 shifts, because they want to make the money. Right, so that's, you know, just be, you know,
Yeah,
you know, so
Yeah.
that's where, and for us, it's the same actually, the cost of having 3 shifts versus 2 shifts is actually about the same. But then they can make more money, they're happier, and so I know, that's right. So
so I'm always kind of like, what, are they getting paid for it? If they're getting paid, and
Obviously,
we,
yeah.
like, then why, if it's something they want to do, is it an issue?
Yeah.
But there is something, you know, these underlying things that do
Yeah,
happen,
so-
and
so-
how it's documented, et
Yeah,
cetera,
yeah,
transparency.
Exactly, yeah, okay. I think the kind of stuff we can
Yeah.
definitely, I mean, the factories we work with.
Yeah, I think definitely too, like within some of our vendors where it's very seasonal,
Okay,
like all of our vendors that do like Gore-Tex and our CNA,
okay.
they're very seasonal businesses.
Oh, I see.
So your capacities go from, you know, 20K to, I'm making it up, 20K to all of a sudden 100K.
Yeah,
And they've got these very seasonal businesses. And we'll get from our vendors sometimes, like, well, this is when we get our orders and we have very high, capacity of that business, and we have to have overtime, there's no way around it. And all the level loading you can do in the world isn't gonna solve for seasonality.
yeah,
It still comes during those months.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think for tier 2, less seasonality, I think for tier 1s,
Yeah,
for sure.
it's a big issue.
It is.
Yeah.
And definitely in you know, don't know, probably Bangladesh too, but you know, it's hard for them to go back to the fields and then go back because it's not realistic anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. But it's also is with labor now. It's the landscape changed so quickly. We started about 10 years ago in Vietnam. After COVID, a lot of people actually went back to the countryside, and they haven't returned.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this was actually So it's harder to find labor now. So and that coupled with inflation, then you basically have to pay and you have to have good conditions for your workers. It's hard. It's not like the days where you can just pay them, pilly and get away with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not that we ever did that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, like, doing all this work, like, coming from big box department stores, where it's like, do you have a RAP certificate? Sure.
Yeah.
Like, what were we doing in social compliance? To being so entrenched in it with the FLA portion, we do, living wage, where you're getting all this data from your vendors, and then you're putting it into your modules. Trying to analyze that data is, like, that's where I'm like, I need my consultant, because I can put it all in, but I don't know how to read it. Or you're reading it wrong, right?
Yeah.
So, over the years, I've had her now 3 years, she'll be going on 3 years. So she's been able to look at the data, across the board, and we have probably like 80% of our vendors have been participating in it, because it's, who's your strategic vendor? And I'm like, strategic vendor by category or by volume? So I look at it by category, so we've added a lot more vendors. But it's been very interesting to see how each of the, because some of our vendors have multiple factories.
Sure.
So it's interesting to see like how they're being paid like above living wage, and then what are the components that are going into it.
Right.
Because it's not just, here's your check, so there's the other pieces that go into it.
Yeah.
And so we've been tracking them. So some of our vendors have been doing it like for 4 years.
Right.
So it's quite a bit of data to see how they've been
Interesting.
tracking.
Okay. I think because, as I mentioned before, it's called ESG, environmental, social, and what's the other?
Governmental?
Governance.
Governance.
Yeah, there you go. So that's a big thing for all of the public companies.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully we can try to find clearer standards and ways to go about for that.
Yeah, because like the verified HIG, okay, but even for us doing carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So now I have, as of last year, one of my sourcing managers was moved to become I don't know how I got carbon footprint. I don't care. So we had to do, I'm always just like, okay, just tell me what I have to do, but I'm not passionate about it, so I don't know why they gave it to me. So about a year and a half ago, we started doing like the baseline of where we are, and we're trying to align with the fabrics division. But the fabrics division just did the whole EPE transition.
Okay.
So they're like, yeah, we got this, 80% carbon reduction, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, we still make garments. So when we sit here and we say, oh, we're getting more business, we're gonna go from X amount of units to this amount of units, it only kills our carbon footprint. Oh, let's add more stores, it's killing our carbon footprint. So everything she's looking at, she's just like, she's like, stop adding stores, like, blah, 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 don't, okay, this looks good, but we bought less, we bought 200,000 units less, that's why it looks better. We didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna buy 300,000, we get 300,000 more, it's gonna kill the carbon footprint.
That's
So for
very
us,
good.
what we've been trying to tackle, and this is something that, you're saying, well, what else could you do, like, what are we looking for?
Sure.
I think anything that reduces our carbon footprint, because the scope 3 is really where we can, is pretty much the only place we're gonna see us be able to make a difference. And we've gotten a lot of pushback, not in the Goreware division. The Goreware division is 80% recycled.
Yeah.
They're on board, they've been on board before we even started talking about it. They've had it in their roadmap since like 2020.
Wow.
So that's always been something. They're very eco, right?
Yeah.
So this year they're like, we're 80% recycled. And I'm like, good for you. But their business is smaller, so it helps, but it doesn't really push us when we have Sika, with a smaller amount of recycled. So we've presented to them, we need to go into recycled materials, and then what happens is the recycled's more expensive, and they say, well, we can't have it to our margin, so they don't change it. So for us, it's trying to find those more carbon footprint friendly ways of dyeing, or anything along those lines that you can kind of.
Okay. This is good. Yeah, definitely. I think that's good to see.
Yeah, and then the recycle piece, we try to do it, and I keep trying to push them, like, okay, well, we have a new fabric. Don't offer them virgin first, just offer them recycled, and don't show them. Because if you show them virgin, and then you say, oh, can I have it in recycled? They're like, oh, if they look at the cost difference, oh, my margin's gonna go, and some of the margins have been like 3, 4, 5%. I'm like, I've never seen, and probably because the industry's all going to recycle, because they are all trying to do the same carbon footprint reductions,
Yes.
so the prices have been going up. When I, back in the day, was taking whole lines of activewear and making it recycled, it was like 15 to 30 cents,
Yeah.
like, who cared?
Yeah.
So, we're finding that the increases are a lot bigger than what they've been in the past.
It's supply and demand, I think it's good enough when it comes right
Yeah,
down.
and let's face it, there's not enough bottles in the world that we're gonna be able to do recycling.
Yeah, exactly, so they're looking at another one. I think recycle, if you want to do garment recycle, recycle from garments or other end products, and that's very expensive.
Yeah,
Whereas from bottles or from, it's a little bit easier.
yeah,
Yeah, where do you do recycled cotton,
yeah. I mean, how do you do recycled cotton, with all of the traceability on cotton now? Like, does it,
Okay.
and, yeah,
So, right now, we do just post-industrial waste. So basically, we have, we take scraps from garment mills and even, other yarn scraps, from, our own factory, other factories. We process that back into fiber and then spin that to yarn. And then we have up to, as high as about 40%, recycled content. And
okay,
But the hard part with that stuff, and I think all the type of stuff, obviously it's not virgin, so it's not going to be as nice. It's not going to look as nice, it's not going to die as well, and so forth. And that's the part that's hard to get the brands to understand. So
yeah.
they want something.
It's harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I was at Urban,
Yeah.
I was doing consulting
Okay.
for
Yeah.
like 2 years with Urban,
Yeah.
and, most of it was Western Hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
So I just only worked on Western Hemisphere, which was a lot of US cotton, et cetera, but they wanted a lot of recycled.
Yeah.
But they also like urban, right?
Yeah.
So they wanted a little bit slubby,
Then it's okay. Yeah.
and it's okay.
Yeah.
but
It's
we're
not
doing
Cuba
things-
Boss or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not theory.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, there you go.
right, you
Yeah.
know, that nice,
Yeah. Very nice
Clean
clean.
one.
Yeah. Exactly.
they'd be like, oh, it skews, and my vendors were always trying to fix it. They're like, no, we like that. And I'd be
Really?
like, yes.
Wow. That's
Very-
a dream customer.
Very hard to control, when you're doing quality control, and they're like, it's skewing, it's doing this, it's twisting. But using something like Recover at the time, like Recover was up and coming, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden with UFLPA, they're doing all that isotopic testing, and they're putting themselves out of business.
Mhm.
And they're finding it, every time they did testing, they were like, it's coming up,
Yeah.
so they're scrapping a lot. So I don't know how,
The traceability part, yeah, Nike asked some really hard questions, and I think for recycled cotton, it's possible, but it's still, there's always going to be small holes here and there.
yeah,
Yeah, there's nothing is 100%, unfortunately. Yeah, there is, we can put tracers. So if we take, we have certified sources of scrap, and then we process them into fiber, we can put in tracers there. It's expensive though to put in tracers, and
Yeah.
that one you can literally with a scanner scan that you have X percentage content, in your yarn or fabric or garment with recycled. And then so we have basically there's a company called GEC, so it's recycled. It's a global, I forget the name, it's some acronym.
Yeah.
Australian cotton. So
Okay.
they put in tracers at the gym. And so this cotton is carbon positive.
Okay.
It's good. So basically they use different types of irrigation and stuff like that. Good quality cotton. They put tracers in so that you can literally prove with a scanner. The scanner even has GPS that this thing is legit. That's probably the best one we've seen so far.
yeah.
Yeah. Other ones whereas like organic cotton, honestly, a lot of it is BS. Yeah.
It's such BS, thank you.
Yeah.
I get so mad, because I have some people that are like, oh, is it organic? And I'm like, who cares? And then I set Pasha to go to the cotton, I'm like, you guys need to look at U.S. cotton. I'm like, the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I did work at Cotton USA.
Oh, you did?
I did for doing consulting.
Oh, wow, okay.
So for 2 years after Macy's, I did consulting, which
Okay.
I loved.
Okay,
So I had a bunch of different projects, but I had Urban Outfitters, it was 2 years, and then I had Cotton USA. So
It's a
you-
great organization.
Yeah, really good organization, and they work with Cotton Inc., and they're all kind of one.
Yeah.
But before that, I'd known them because we worked with them quite a bit at Macy's.
Macy's, right.
So I've known those guys forever.
Right.
And they just, they do really good work, but it's like when you have a United States cotton farmer come in to talk to you,
Yeah.
like you get the tears.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're so committed. Yes, yeah. And it's like less water, it's more, and so it's whenever I hear, like Catherine had given me, she was like, oh, they want to use organic cotton. I'm like, organic cotton's BS. And so is, BSI cotton, all that crap. I'm like, it's garbage. So I was like, can you send me the certificate? So she sent it to me. I'm like, no.
We use.
So she's like, Jenna said no organic cotton. We're done.
We're like 95, well, for the longest time, we're 100% US and Brazilian, that's it.
Yeah.
And then Brazil, they don't have irrigation, they use it rains, they collect it,
Yeah.
So it's fine, I know, it's marketing. And then the Indian organic is by the worst, a lot of this is a rubber stamp,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So I've always tried to use US cotton, but didn't even market it. It was just knowing that it was US cotton and it was, cleaner.
It is.
But when I came here and people are like, no, yes, I'm like, no. And then they're like, organic. I'm like, no.
Yeah, this is marketing.
Yeah. But, I mean, things like that where we can try to reduce the carbon footprint within
Got it.
scope 3 is
Okay,
really our
social
focus.
compliance.
So, social compliance and that, I think, are number 1 and 2 of what we're looking at.
Okay. How about in terms of working with your teams, in terms of innovation and development? I think we were out over in Bozeman 2 years ago.
Yeah.
About 2 years ago. But we haven't gone there since. Well, how do you think we should interface with your teams more? Of course, they come out often enough.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
know Emily was just here with Catherine. And that's kind of like, Emily's really the sicker person.
Okay.
Catherine, Pasha is the leader of the material team.
Yes, that's great. Yeah.
And then, he really focused, like his passion is more sustainability and innovation and stuff like that. And then I've got Catherine, who's my sourcing manager, but she also does all the business pieces of the materials. Like, she's my go-to for everything.
Okay.
I was like, okay, I need a mill strategy. Who's gonna do it? It should be Pasha, Catherine's gonna take care of it.
Okay.
So, that's really, the team.
Okay.
Toby, who's Boreware,
Mhm.
he really keeps his stuff all together. Like,
Okay.
he really doesn't need Catherine unless
Right.
something comes up that's a new mill or something. Otherwise, he takes care of all his own stuff.
Okay.
Doesn't really need help,
She's something.
Yes, very self-sufficient, he just maintains everything. And they have smaller
Yeah.
base. So Toby would be the direct contact there.
Have I met Toby here?
Toby,
Toby.
Overwear.
Was he in-
Overwear
Yes, you did.
你没有？
Okay.
Actually, you didn't because
你有去欧洲吗？
No,
performance day.
Performance days, yeah.
Ah.
I missed it because you
I didn't make it
your
up.
flight, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Toby does performance days, and there's 2, I think, that are in Europe. What's the other one called?
There is for
No, the other show, Performance Day, what's the other show?
Is it Functional Fabric?
Expo.
But ISPO.
ISPO, thank you.
This was good, yeah.
Yes,
that was a big
yeah.
one.
So they do ISPO, they do performance
Mm.
days, and that's, Toby's thing.
Okay.
And then Emily's really sick, and then Scott, who, you've met Scott.
Engineer team, Scott team.
Scott, Tim's, yes,
Uh-huh,
yes.
yeah.
So Scott is in EM5, and
Mhm.
he is our Gore laminate engineer.
Okay.
I'm not sure what he's engineering, but that's what we call him, he's the engineer.
Sure.
So he works on all the Gore materials, getting them, he's kind of like a project manager,
Yeah.
as opposed to, he's not out there developing the fabrics, but he's like the project manager of working with the plant to get everything laminated. So I think a little bit more innovation might have to come from Scott, because we might be doing a little bit more of our own, they call them customer order laminates, where we can control the face and the backer, and do more there. So I think Scott's gonna try to get a little bit more involved in that. So Scott's really the Gore, but he would do the face, maybe, and get more involved in that, but he hasn't been doing the development so much. I don't think that he can't do it, so I have to challenge Pasha a little bit, like,
Sure.
does Emily need to do it or can Scott do it? Let's get Scott a little bit more bandwidth.
Sure.
So he's laminates, Emily's all the Gore Select. Catherine's more like my business manager, keeping everything together. She's the glue. Pasha looks at more innovation and he loves sustainability, that's his thing. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much the team.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And then the developers who I'm sure you've met, like
Yeah.
Eric Gilmore and
Yeah, that's
Diane and
great,
those
yeah.
guys, and Amy Leeds Roberts.
Yeah.
You know, they're developers, so they're always like looking for stuff.
Yes, yes.
But they're not doing the fabric work.
Mm.
Yeah. And then Jessica, obviously color,
Yeah.
and very technical, so we try to use her as much as we can. So Jessica is part of the team. She likes to, it's always good to have Jessica travel with like Kat and Emily.
Oh,
Yeah,
good. Good team.
yeah.
You know, Eric literally saved me twice.
What?
I got stuck in the snow twice in a row
It-
on the same afternoon, trying to get out of Bozeman.
Really?
Yeah, it started snowing and it was pretty embarrassing.
Were you in a rental car or?
Of course. Yeah, I was, and then, what did I do? We finished our meeting early, and I was like, okay, I'm going for a run. So I drove up to some park somewhere, and then in the parking lot, I couldn't get out. Right, and I tried for like an hour, and then finally he came and saved me. And then on the way to the airport, I slid out again. That was embarrassing, but I think Eric and there was someone else.
Bar club?
No, it wasn't Pasha. It was some younger guy. Anyways,
Trevor.
Trevor. It was Trevor.
Trevor.
Yeah.
Trevor, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, every time I go to Bozeman, it snows. It could
I
be
know.
April, it could be October,
Yeah,
it could be August. I'm like,
Yeah.
why is there snow?
Yeah.
And one time, I want to say it was either April or like September. And I ended up going and I went from Atlanta. And in Atlanta, you know, I don't have a
Yeah.
winter coat.
No.
So I showed up in this little tiny puffer and like shoes, and we got like a foot of snow.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, this is torture. And so I was wearing all the thicker gear, like the
There you go.
men's big puffy jackets.
Yeah.
I was sitting in meeting rooms inside of a sleeping bag. I was freezing. And I was like,
Oh wow.
I hate it. Every time I come here, there's snow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I never rent a car
Okay.
because I do not like to drive.
Mm,
And
yeah.
you shouldn't have
So
to.
we're city people.
It's from there to there. I mean,
Yeah, they call Uber.
Uber.
Yeah.
But then when it snows, there's no Uber, so I ended up having to walk to the office, which normally in the summer is not a big deal. It's less than a mile. But I had sneakers on, and it was like 2 feet of snow trying to get it. And Trevor drives by me, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm like,
Yeah. So I think they're a city folk.
"Yeah, yeah." And I was like, "I couldn't get Uber, so I'm walking."
No.
And I was freezing, and I'm like, "Are you gonna stop and get me?" He's like, "Well, the office is right there." I'm like,
Oh boy.
"Yeah." So I can sympathize
That's
with the
hilarious.
snow.
So we should go this summer.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I want to go August.
I wanted to take me on a hunt or something. I was follow along or something.
Yeah, I want to.
I do wanna
Have
try
you
that.
met Jay? Jay's
No,
the
I'm not.
okay. So Jay was in marketing. Jay's a cool guy. He comes from like Nike.
Okay.
So I told Jay he's got to take me duck hunting
Yeah.
because I like duck, but
Yeah.
You went down for the hunting then.
well, if I'm gonna hunt something, it's only gonna be duck.
Duck is, I
Nothing
wouldn't mind duck. Yeah, duck would be
Duck I
good.
could do,
Yeah.
but the other stuff, no.
No,
Okay.
not relevant.
Okay, the smaller ones are good.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, that's hilarious.
So how about Catherine's law right now? She is focused on fabric sourcing or garment sourcing?
Both.
Both.
So
Oh.
the way Catherine took on, I mean, Catherine's been with Sika for what, or with Gore
For a long
for
time.
20-something years.
Wow.
So it was kind of like, even talking, have you guys met Ben Lee?
Ben Lee, I don't know. Ben Lee.
Ben.
Ben.哦，Ben 我不太认识。
No, I don't know.
So
No.
Ben Lee is in the Shenzhen office, and
Uh-huh.
he used to be the plant leader for Shenzhen.
Okay.
And then he came over to help with garments and stuff, so he set up a lot of the systems, So he's known Catherine
All time.
20-something years, right? But at one point, it was Catherine, Ben, and like one other person doing Sika and Goreware. So, Catherine works with ZKG, who's our biggest vendor, tier one. They're the number one tier one. And that's her account, but it's just for Sika. Roland does Goreware. So, right now, that's kind of, after all these years, it's only like 30%, because I've asked her, like, how much is materials and how much is sourcing? And she's like, for the garments, it's probably about 30% of my time. For the materials, it's probably about 70. So, ideally, I've been asking for Catherine to be 100% materials, because she does like all the carryover costing, she does all the onboarding,